seats above probably in my cab and then fill the bed of my truck and the whole thing. I appreciate that, but I'll get him. It's cool.
I can't help you. There's too many.
I've been offering to help him too, and he just tells me no as well.
That's not true.
Well, that's because you're low on the wiper fluid.
My power steering's gone.
Your blinker fluid's out. All right, listen. Here you are, right? And Boucer, I gotta say, I really, really am just enamored with how many times you come on the show in the last couple of months. It's really just been tickling me to death. It's been wonderful to have you, and for the call-in stuff and all that.
You found out I could speak English. You used to think I didn't speak English.
No, it's really just been a treat. It's been an honor, like having you be associated with the show as much as you have. And
well, I'm proud to be connected with water.
Yeah, and we feel that, and it really just gives me goosebumps, and it means the world to me. And so thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Jeff Harkavy, thank you for coming in and sharing your time with us. We had your daughter on recently, a couple months ago, and
well, didn't you tell me that this show is the true story of Heather Harkavy?
This is it. So today we embark on the chronicles of Heather Harkavy.
Yeah.
No. She's doing such a great thing with the Fish for Change thing. I mean, you have to be incredibly proud of her.
Incredibly proud.
And everything. And she's such an amazing person. Yeah. And I met her for the first time on the show. And thanks to Nick for making that introduction. And meeting you for the first time here on the show. And I love when that happens because you just get the best conversations. That way, those first time conversations are always the best.
I'm going to start with the first throwing of Heather under the bus. Not very many people interrogate Dennis.
Right.
And she interrogated him.
Yeah, she.
I enjoyed that interview.
Yeah?
I wasn't sure.
Did you watch it or listen to it?
I listened to it. I wasn't sure who interviewed who, but
are you kidding me? He had to buy bigger hats after that show.
No, I thought that was a great episode, and enjoyed it a lot, and I think you both shared a lot of great information.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about both of you. It was enjoyable.
I appreciate that. So welcome both of you to the Connected by Water podcast, right? Powered by Joey Cardi Kaiser Dodge Jeep Ram and fueled by our very good friends at Papa's Pilar Rum. Remind you never to be a spectator, gentlemen. Let's raise a glass. We are drinking the Legacy today. I busted out the good stuff for you guys today.
Greatly appreciated.
And it's the least I can do. So I know one of the big things that we wanted to kind of get into today was a discussion about the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, right? And I think that is going to be the bulk of what we discussed today, because I think it is an incredibly important organization that has done wonderful things, and who better to have on the show to discuss that than you today, both of you, truly. So give me a little bit to start off with that conversation. Some background on you and your association with the BTT.
Sure. Well, so going back about 28 years ago, I used to do a lot of fishing with Bill Curtis. May rest in peace. Great legend in the sport, one of the innovators of saltwater fly fishing, and a great tarpon angler, bonefish angler. And when we would go fishing, he used to lament about just how much the tarpon fishery in particular had declined during his watch. And he was very troubled by this. And he had taken various scientists out on pro bono trips to do some research and observation. But every time I was on the water with him, he'd say, if there was some group out there that really wanted to take the reins and run with this, he goes, I started a foundation called Tarpon Unlimited, but it's done nothing because I don't have funding, I don't have the connectivity, but I've just taken some people out on free research runs. And about the third time he brought that up, it had already come to my attention that a group out of Ocean Reef, a group of diehard anglers that spent a good part of their year there fishing those Key Biscayne waters, had started something called the Bonefish Research Project. And they had teamed up with the Rosenstiel School of Science, and they were just starting to play with the spaghetti tags that they'd put in Bonefish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mentioned that to Bill, and I said, it seems to me that anyone that loves Bonefish has a great appreciation for tarpon and vice versa. Kind of like the old Reese's peanut butter commercial where the guys bump into each other. You got
Right.
chocolate in my peanut butter. You got peanut butter in my chocolate. You put them together and you're going to have a bigger following. And Bill said, well, that makes a lot of sense to me. He goes, you think you could arrange a meeting? And I said, I probably could, but you're going to have to promise me one thing, Bill. He goes, what's that? So you're going to have to be on good behavior. These people are scared to death of you. You run them off their flats. You yell at them, So, they may not be receptive, but if so, you're going to have to, kind of be a good listener too. Okay, I'll agree to that. So I met with Tom Davidson and Russ Fisher, who were two of the originators of the Bonefish Research Project. And they thought it was a good idea, but again, they were kind of pensive because they weren't sure how it would all go down with Bill in the room. And there were going to be a few others maybe present at that meeting who had some run-ins with them.
As I understand it, and I never experienced it, but Bill would pull up to Curtis Point and say, "Get off my bank."
Yeah.
That's what I heard, and he wasn't polite about it.
Right. And so,
Even if someone was already there.
Yeah,
Right.
he'd tell him, "Get off his point."
that's, I've heard that. I've heard other versions, but,
Well, they were not as clean as what I said.
Sure. And most times people left, and other times, he threatened to ram them or meet him at the dock, or
Really?
It got a little bit crazy. From
That's
what I
pretty hardcore.
understand, I don't know this for sure, but I think Tom McGuane had Bill Curtis in mind as the kind of like the antagonist in 92 in the Shade. Not mentioned in there. It's not been publicly stated as such, but a lot of people believe that. Anyway, so this meeting takes place, and it takes place at Ocean Reef. Everyone shares their stories. Everyone listens intently. Everyone finds a common ground. They're concerned for the resource. They're concerned for the fisheries. And within a few short weeks, both names meld into Bonefish and Tarpon Unlimited. And the original premise was to gain greater visibility and acceptance by the fishing community for this organization. At the time, I was doing a lot of fishing with various guides. I had recently been bitten with the fly fishing bug, and I was able to connect a lot of dots. So I told the gang from Ocean Reef, I'll be able to put together, I think, a group of a dozen or more captains that would give us a good listening and likely come on board. And I know some of the leaders in the sport, some of the legends in the sport, because I had been organizing a backcountry fishing tournament as a fundraiser for the Boy Scouts, for the IGFA, for the Guy Harvey Ocean Foundation, and ultimately it was a fundraiser for BTT as well. It was called the Boy Scout Backbone Tournament, and it took place out of Ocean Reef. So I had a lot of connectivity to the celebrities that fished the tournament, and within a couple of months, we went from just being a group of like 10, and Boucer was on board early on with us. Thank you for all your efforts over the years, Boucer. But within a few short months, we probably had 36 guides and a dozen of the great legends of the sport on board. I mean, Chico, Billy Pate, Stu Apt, Bill Curtis came to every meeting. Their attendance was just incredible.
Wow.
They shared
you
stories.
just busted off a Mount Rushmore right there.
Yeah, you know what? It was. I was the youngest guy in the room, and I'd float out of those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
As I was driving back up the highway, I would call friends, my wife, my mother. Hey, I just can't even believe the meeting that took place, the good intentions shared, the fact that the resource has this opportunity to benefit now from all these champions, and it kept growing from there. And anyway, I don't want to ramble, but that was the humble beginnings of Bonefish and Tarpon.
No, you're not. I mean,
Trust.
by all means, ramble. I mean, I'm enamored by this whole thing. I wanted to get a snapshot of not just the history, not just the things that, get posted on your mission statement on the site and things like that. I want to get underneath the real genesis of how this evolved, because you guys do so much good. And I didn't mean to be rude by looking at my phone, because I wanted to
Do what you need to do.
I had this page teed up here for the site, because when I was looking at the BTT, I don't really do a ton of research before the podcast, and this is an unscripted format, and this Bouncer knows, like, the conversation goes where the conversation goes, right?
I thought I came here to talk about Heather.
We'll get
You'll
to
get a
that.
chance.
We're going to get to that. Trust me.
I want to throw in one little statement that tells you where Bill Curtis was coming from.
Okay.
I was a full-time tarpon and actually it was almost all tarpon in 78 and 79. By 80, it was tarpon and sailfish. But I was a full-time tarpon guide. And if you went to government cut in the winter of 1980, there'd be some tarpon at the end of the jetties rolling. And the current was real strong there, so it was really hard to fish those fish. But if you went half a mile offshore, the channel makes a dogleg to the left as you go out. And at that turn, there would be hundreds of thousands of tarpon. And if you wanted to catch one, you took a yellow pompano jig, no bait, dropped it down 30 feet, and did not move your rod as you drifted with the current. And that's all it took to catch a tarpon on an artificial lure with a spinning rod or a plug rod. You would drift along, you'd look over the side, and you could see the tarpon like this underneath the boat. That was 1980. If you went to Haulover and fished south of Haulover Inlet, there was a whole lineup of tarpon in 20 feet of water, and there was a whole lineup of tarpon in 12 feet of water. And you could drift through the fish out deep and catch one, and you might shake them up for a few minutes, and you just drift into 12 feet of water, and you'd catch one in there, and then you'd go back and start in outside of 20 feet, catch one, and drift in here and catch one, and it was ridiculous. They stopped the runaround roller rigs for kingfish, and the net boats took up netting sharks to harvest, predominantly from Daytona to Jacksonville. And LeMasters was running the Marine Fishery Commission at the time. And he lived up there, and he would run the beach every day for exercise. And it was about 1982 or 83 was when the shark netting started, and he would run down the beach, and he'd have to jump over a dead tarpon, run around 2 or 3 dead tarpon, jump over one, run around a couple, and a couple of turtles that were dead. In 2 years' time, there were no more tarpon out at the dogleg. 100 times as many as there were at the end of the jetties. There were none left at the dogleg. There was only one row of tarpon at Haulover. They were in 12 feet of water. And when we started, we would start throwing mirror lures at night at 5th Street, and we could fish anywhere from 5th Street all the way to looking down Bear Cut and catch tarpon on mirror lures, mornings and nights. And by the mid-'80s, there were no tarpon more than a couple hundred yards south of the jetty. And they had wiped out, in my opinion, over 80% of the tarpon population that migrated from the Carolinas and even further north through Miami for the winter, then down to the Keys, out to spawn in the Gulf Stream, and then filter back to the north in the summertime. They had wiped them out. Over 80% in 2 or 3 years. It's never come back.
So this is what Bill Curtis sees.
Bill Curtis saw all that too. And that was probably what fired up Bill Curtis the most.
Yeah. It's incredible. It always amazes me too, the power that the community that we have and we develop and we enhance, and the things that we can do, right? But I think consistency is really the factor, right? We always say that there's no finish line to any of this, right? There's not going to be one day like, yay, we did it, conservation. We won the World Series of Conservation. We championed it. Now we can stop. Right? There's always going to be an ongoing effort. Right? But when you see things like that, you need to take a little bit extra charge, and that's why developing organizations like this, are so important, so vitally important to the resources and bringing them back, and not only just bringing them back, but educating people about what the right and the wrong things are to do.
Huge part of it, education.
Well,
100%.
look, I personally believe that probably a lot of what took the keys from septic tanks to sewers was the decline of the water quality, which caused the decline of the bonefish.
I agree.
Mhm.
And you know that bonefish people had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And it's a good example of their success. And today we have Captains for Clean Water. And they're fighting tooth and nail every day to improve the quality of the water coming from the land out to the estuaries and the reefs.
Mm-hmm.
Every day they fight tooth and nail. And every day I say, God, I wish I was young enough to be in that fight and to be involved. I'm so proud of the young men today that are fighting the good fight. And I know what they're going through because they get shot down and they get shot down and they get shot down and they get shot down. And the only way you can win, and I learned it a long time ago because I'd go to Marine Fishery Commission meetings, so I was blue in the face. The only way you win is to every time they shoot you down, you get up and go back at it.
Yeah. Keep coming.
And I'm so proud of those young men that are fighting that fight every day.
Well, Captains for Clean Water is doing an amazing job, especially right now with the hurricane cleanup too, and I shouldn't even say the cleanup, the recovery that they're doing for Southwest Coast. And we're proud to be putting our fundage from the shirt fundraiser that we did to them for their guide relief fund, because it's something we truly believe in. We believe in their mission. They're boots on the ground, and that's the bottom line. Right? They're not just an organization that is going to collect money and divert funds. They're actually going to take it and just grassroots, just divert it to where it needs to go, and also be boots on the ground and help people up when they've fallen down.
Absolutely.
And that's what they do.
They are focused, they're well-intentioned, and they're applying their energy, their leadership, their following is as effectively as an organization can. Hey, can I ask you a question?
You can.
Can you
I'll allow it.
All right. Share with us a bit about the Hurricane Ian Relief Benefit Fund, because it grabbed me when the email came across, caught me passionately.
Mm-hmm.
Glad to say I got a shirt on the way, but
Yep.
I'd like to hear your,
Yeah,
I got
real-
a shirt on.
Well, we like
Yes.
we like to think that the shirt is just the cherry on top of the whole thing, right? That's not the reason why you should be buying the shirt, but it goes back to Hurricane Dorian, and I will say that we're staring at a Cat 5 storm that was on track to come right through like North Palm Beach, I think, at the time. And then it did a little bit of a bump and buzzsaw on the Bahamas, right?
Sure did.
Which wasn't expected. It looked like it was going to go boom, right through the Bahamas and come straight for us. Everybody was boarded up. Everybody was ready and prepared and hunkered down. And I remember this explicitly. It was Labor Day of 2018, right? 2019? 2019. And we're all around the TV just watching, not moving on Grand Bahama as a Cat 5. I swear to God, I heard screams in my ears because I knew what was happening over there. And it broke my heart. And I'm home with my family, and I said to my wife, I said, Liz, I got to go into the studio. I'll be right back. And I went in there, and I designed a shirt and I put Stronger Together. It's the only thing I could come up with. And I just threw something up on Facebook.
You did good.
I didn't have a site. I didn't have a website. Our website was under construction. So I said, let's just sell some shirts. I think I'm going to sell a couple hundred shirts. I said, guys, I know what these people are going through. It was in the middle of the hurricane. They're going to need money. They're going to need help. So here's a shirt I designed. Let's see what we can do. And that thing went absolutely bonkers. And I had to write a QuickBooks invoice to everybody that ordered the shirt. Right? I couldn't even take the transaction on a website because I didn't have my site up yet, which was a nightmare.
Thank you.
Right? And we ended up stroking a check for $40,000 at the end of it. right, to the Greater Miami Billfish Tournament, which was a 501c3. And that's why we directed it towards that, because we had to give it to a 501c3, which
Right.
Brick Peoples and Bruce Marks were running that there. And I know for a fact that the $40,000 that we raised went to buy lumber to build homes in Marsh Harbor. It went to the Church of God over there in Marsh Harbor, right? So we felt good about what we did. Right, because I didn't want to give it to and nothing against the Red Cross or any of the larger organizations, but I didn't want to just throw it into the ether.
Right.
I wanted to see it work, and we did. It was a nightmare of a project for us to deal with, but that's okay. Nothing compared to what they had to deal with over there, right?
It's there, but for the grace of God.
Right. And then, so this hurricane pops up, and I'm like, man, am I gonna... we got spared again. Are we going to do this again? So I texted my business partner, Harris. I go, another shirt, ? And he goes, yes, absolutely. And that's all I needed to hear, right? When your business partner says that. So we did. And again, the next day we had a shirt out and designed it up. And again, it went bonkers. So Mike Myatt sees what we're doing. God love him.
God love him.
And he says, we're behind you, D. Whatever you want to do, right? We're going to match 10% of whatever you raise, right? And we're going to put that on top of it. I said, Mike, that's amazing. He even called me back 2 days later. He goes, well, we're not going to worry about the 10%. We're just going to give you a nice match at the end. We'll do more than that. I said, Mike, that's fantastic. I know Chaos Fishing down the street, Marshall Gordon. They're gonna write us a check at the end of it all, and we're gonna present that. So we're looking at a very similar number right now for what we did for Dorian for the people of Southwest Florida. So I just want to say though, humbly, that it's the people that get involved that just buy into the program, that buy the shirts, that do that. Those are the guys that raise the money. Right? We're just helping the best way we know how.
That's very humble.
We're doing whatever we can do within our power, right? And
it's very humble, but it takes leadership, it takes focus, it takes commitment, and
I was
a lot
gonna
of
say,
man hours. Well done, man. Well
the
done.
The little guy out on the street says, "What can I do?" And Dennis says, "I'll give you a chance to buy a shirt to help those people." He is the catalyst that gives the little guy an opportunity to get involved.
Yeah.
All right. So we did good. I thank you guys for saying that. But so we did. People got involved. We did good, right? And I'm very happy and very proud that of our association and being a part of the Papa's Pilar family, and the level of assistance that they give. They're sending out e-blasts about the shirt. They were there too. I don't want to. It was not just a one-man operation. And people got involved, and people assisted, and people helped out. Lorelei, for crying out loud, a lot of this fell on her shoulders. I mean, she's the one calling people if there was any customer service issue, or emailing them and taking care of it. She never asked for this project, but she didn't blink an eye. When I said this is what we're doing, and God bless her, and the wonderful individual that she is. She's done a fantastic job with this whole project, and I can't thank her enough, because without her, it would be 10 times more difficult for me to deal with.
Can I plead ignorance? Who's Lorelei?
Lorelei? The CCA scholarship winning.
You'll
Lorelei?
get old someday, and you'll have. I thought that's who it might have been, but one day you'll get old and you'll say, "Who's this guy across the table from me anyway?" I thought that's who it might be. But she is basically she's a assistant here.
Yeah, she's my assistant. Yeah. So anyway, but I thank you for bringing that up and allow us to talk about that. But
sure,
she's the next Heather Harkavy, by the way.
Yeah.
Have you heard her story at all?
God bless her. I look forward to meeting her now.
She's a high school senior.
Yep.
She went to a CCA event in Orlando, where it was CCA, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were going to give out scholarships.
Their first ever youth scholarship program. 10 students from all over the state got invited to this, where kids from all over the state applied for this. They only invited 10 to go up there for a week of seminars and educational opportunities, and you got to see the hatchery, and then they got to go fishing, and they got to sit down and understand and get educated about conservation. And at the end of it, 3 of those students received scholarships a first place, second place, and a third place. I think the first place was like 5,000 and 2,500 and like 1,000, something like that. She took the top scholarship.
How old is she?
She's 17 years old.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
she's a Fish for Change candidate.
She's a 5.0.
Oh, she
She's a
is.
5.0 student. She was the president of her junior class at the time. And she's a National Merit Scholar, National Honor Society. She's a state champion swimmer. She's the complete and total package. Yeah, she's incredible.
Like I said, she's
Excuse
the next
me.
Heather.
Note
Yeah.
to file. Got to introduce Lorelei to Heather.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, 100%. And she's an incredible angler.
Wow.
Yeah, on top of it to boot. So
I look forward to hearing more about this
Yeah.
gifted child.
Let me just mention a couple things here too, and I want to just touch on a few things about the BTT, the Bonefish Tarpon Trust. And I'm going to go right off your website and do a couple, because you got some highlights posted here. And like I said, I don't do a ton of research here, but I saw this and it caught my eye. And I think that by mentioning this, it's going to lend itself to some pretty cool conversations here, right?
Okay.
Work with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission anglers to implement a catch and release only regulations for tarpon and bonefish. So you guys are getting involved on the high level.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
In fact, Rodney Barreto is a board member.
That's fantastic. You created the first ever permit tagging program in Florida, Belize, and Mexico, and improved permit fishing regulations in Florida. Right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. You've mapped critical flats fishing areas in the Florida Keys that are helping to guide management strategies of the Florida Keys, National Marine Sanctuary, and the park over there in the Everglades.
Yes.
Right? Wonderful stuff. You've conducted bonefish studies in Florida, the Bahamas, Mexico, Belize, and Cuba that are being used to develop habitat and fisheries protections. You've launched a collaborative juvenile tarpon habitat initiative to identify, protect, and restore juvenile tarpon habitats. You've launched the largest study ever undertaken in bonefish reproductive science, a project designed to develop new tools for bonefish restoration. Right? And you've launched the Fix Our Water campaign to inform and engage anglers in Florida's ongoing water management crisis, which, clean water is like our big champion cause here.
Absolutely.
And the list goes on here. You've done work in the Bahamas. You've worked with the state of Florida, the governments, to create multi-billion-dollar recreational fisheries.
And mangrove replanting in partnership with, oh my God, what's Mang? Excuse
With
me.
Mang, okay. Yep, absolutely.
And-
Fantastic organization that they are.
Incredible.
Yeah. It speaks volumes, I think, to the organization and everything that it's done thus far and the things that they continue to do. So tell me a little bit more about the use of science in the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust and
I'm
and
going
the
to
progression
interject
of it.
one just to open the conversation.
Sure.
We all know that they have bonefish in the Keys and Biscayne Bay. And when I was a kid, acre-sized schools of giant bonefish we'd fished on Sunny Isles Pier, which is now Newport Pier. That was our hangout when we were kids. And we'd watch huge schools of giant mature bonefish swimming south along the coast. Where are they coming from? And because of the tagging program in the Florida Keys, they proved that bonefish from the Florida Keys swim across the bottom or the top of the Gulf Stream and go to the Bahamas. They tag them in Florida Bay and they catch them in the Bahamas.
Really?
And if you didn't have tagging programs, you'd never know that stuff.
Nobody
and that's
would
just
know
one
that.
example.
Take that a step further. Early on, at some of our first meetings, Billy Pate used to lament about the fact that he did a lot of fishing in Mexico, and he fished tournaments, but he did other record hunting pursuits, and every day he'd come back to the dock and just see dozens of tarpon hanging from hooks. Every sports fish operation that went out there killed every single fish. He inquired. He said, "What do you do with the tarpon? I mean, nobody eats tarpon meat." He goes, "Well, what they do is they end up bringing them down to the village center, and they'll open them up, and people will scrape out the roe, and they'll eat the roe." So they were killing 100-pound tarpon to get a pound of roe. And we knew that, according to Billy and others, that this probably was thousands, maybe tens of thousands of tarpon a year, between fish that were being netted, fish that were being caught commercially, fish with being killed
I got to step
in
on
tournaments.
I got to step on your conversation
Okay.
1 minute. You're looking at as big a criminal as anything he's talking about, if not worse. When I was a young guide, if your people caught a tarpon, you should get that tarpon mounted.
Mm-hmm.
And we would kill whatever size tarpon it was. We'd tie it off to the back of the flat skiff, and we'd sit in channel 2, and we'd keep fishing. And we only killed them if they were mounts, but we killed them to get mounted. There was a commission involved. We helped make our living.
You brought it up, and then I'm going to bust you after you're done.
Hold on a minute.
All right.
But then I think it was Ben Hardesty was his name. But at any rate, an executive from Coca-Cola bought Pfluger Taxidermy, and he sent out a notice to Isla Morada guides, particularly Bud and Mary's, if not others, which is where I was at. And he said, we no longer use tarpon parts to make tarpon mounts. They're all fiberglass. We will double your commission if you talk your people into turning the tarpon loose and getting a release mount. In 1976,
Mm-hmm.
the taxidermy world did not go all release mounts until 2010?
Right.
Yeah, it was very recent. Yeah.
Because they kept it under wraps, because if you could get your angler to kill the fish and keep it in a boat, you could make sure that he didn't back out of doing the mount.
Mm-hmm.
There was, if we keep this fish, that means you're
You got to
committed
use it. Yeah, you
to
got to
doing
use
the
it.
mount.
Yeah.
And the captain's got a commission from the taxidermist. So this evolutionary process had been around for
But
30 years before people started realizing that you could get these beautiful release mounts, because all the molds that were ever needed were already created.
No, they still need molds today. The taxidermists will send out a notice. We are in desperate need of a certain size fish to replicate a mold. And so they might kill one fish and mount 10,000 fish off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like for instance, we caught a 548-pound swordfish.
Probably 98% of the mounts molds that will ever be needed have already been created.
Most definitely. But we caught a 546-pound swordfish, and Great Taxidermy was offering a free mount of any fish that won the tournament. Well, our customer got a 650-pound swordfish mount because they don't have a 546, but a 650 isn't that much different when you're looking at a giant fish hanging on the wall. But going back even further, and I credit this with being the biggest impact in my life. I was working at the Castaways charter boat docks in the early 70s, and we were mounting fish capital of the world was the Castaways charter boat dock. We mounted more sailfish and sharks and dolphin and bonitas and barracudas than any place else in the world, probably the whole world combined. And it was probably 1972, and a Vietnam veteran who had terrible PTSD started working on the dock. He worked for me a few trips and everybody else, and I don't know where he got them.
Mm-hmm.
But he got stickers, not much, about the size of a cigarette package, that said, where will the destruction of wildlife end? And he would walk down the dock and he'd put a sticker on every dead fish on the dock.
Huh.
And it hit me right between the eyes.
Really?
And I went from, we're making money doing this and we're booking charters by having dead fish behind our boats. That's over for me. Yeah, I'll mount a few fish. I'll make a few bucks on that. But you'll never see a dead sailfish or a shark or a barracuda or anything behind my boat just to book tomorrow's charter. That was the end of it, 1972.
So, I'm going to do a little shout out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thanks, Carlene.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with King Sailfish, Ray
Mm-hmm.
Douglas.
Yep.
From the get-go, he was promoting release mounts.
Yep.
And making it clear that you didn't need to kill a fish.
A great company.
Great company. Ray Douglas, proprietor, involved in so many conservation efforts. He makes trophy mounts available for the IGFA, CCA, BTT,
Handicapped kids.
Harkavy Ocean Foundation, handicapped kids. He's great responsible player in our fishing community, and from the get-go, he always made a conservation message as
Very
part
much
of his message.
I wanted segue because these all sound like do-gooders, right?
Yeah.
Right? They all sound like
Gotta
do-gooders.
get
All
back,
but me,
we
I
gotta get back to Mexican tarpon because it ties into your science question too.
We will definitely talk about Mexican tarpon. I want to bring up, though, since we're talking about do-gooders real quick, I want to bring up the Starbright do-gooder of the week. Okay?
Hey, maybe you know the answer.
Yes, what?
I do post everything on Instagram.
Okay.
And if I go Apple Sand or whatever that thing's called, do-gooder,
Right.
there's about
Hashtag.
there's about 20 do-gooders. If you go hashtag, there's about 15 do-gooders.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the right do-gooder?
Well, you have to listen to the podcast so you can get do-gooder of the week.
No,
Right.
but I want to credit do-gooder on my Instagram post every day.
Oh, you want to credit the do-gooder?
Yeah.
You message it.
No, I want it to be on my post.
Well, then you should do hashtag do-gooder.
Oh, it doesn't matter if it's the wrong do-gooder?
No, just do
okay.
do-gooder. D-O-O. And how that do-gooder came about was Corey Redwine. Right?
Yeah.
You know Corey and Derek Redwine. I think they were talking about.
They're great guys.
She spoke.
Oh, they're fantastic.
She
Great guy
spoke
and
out
gals.
well, so this is how this program started. It was the work that Corey's doing with the mangrove planting and the work with
Clams
Starbright,
and-
right? And the things that we're doing with Starbright right now, things that she's really doing with Starbright and the artwork that she's creating from the trash and everything. And so she said, "Oh, you got to do gooder." And she kind of spoke out of turn, like, "No, wait, let's roll with that because you could be a do gooder." Right? So Starbright got on board, and we announced we spotlight a do-gooder on every episode of the show, and she feeds me these do-gooders that Starbright comes up with, like they want to highlight, and they get this bucket of stuff, right?
That's
and this
great.
week's do-gooder is Steve Clark, right? And Steve Clark is a husband and a father, and he's all water activities from surfing to fresh and saltwater fishing, and he's a big steward for their community up there in Merritt Island, and he does his own cleanups, but he sees others doing good. He stops and takes time to help them. Right, when he does, and we need more people like that doing like that. So Steve Clark is this week's do-gooder of the week.
How about a toast to Steve
yeah,
Clark?
absolutely.
Here's to
And
Steve Clark.
and the reason I wanted to interject that there in that spot is because we were talking about the mangroves and all the stuff that Corey's doing and Derek does up there, and it's really, really important stuff. And I always want to spotlight that every time we bring up the Starbright do-gooder.
Yeah.
Starbright's always environmentally friendly products, and all the support that they give to our clean water community is just incredible.
I got to share something.
Yes, please.
Derek Redwine
Mm-hmm.
was donating things to the Boy Scout backbone 25 years ago when he first getting started, when he really probably couldn't even afford to
Yeah, back
be
then probably
that
not.
philanthropic, and was just always a very committed.
Yeah.
you know,
I'm very good friends with Derek and
Remember-
Corey, and I'm trying to get them. Obviously, they're a couple hours away from us here, a couple hours drive away from us here, but I'm trying to get them in on the table. I'd love to have an episode with them. They say it's going to happen. I don't know when just yet.
Well, if you
but
need
they are
somebody
just
to go up there and put a
incredible
rope
people.
around their neck and drag them down,
Yeah,
I'll
probably should.
volunteer.
Probably should. They're just incredible people. They
They're
really are.
just the
And he's a great
most
artist.
down-to-earth
They're both great
people.
artists, and I respect them completely. We have such great talks, Derek and I do, and Corey, just about the mission and our life's purpose and different things, and how that is just intertwined with sustainability and conservation and the meaning that it brings, and the intrinsic value of what we do as artists, and how we try to use our powers for good and bring the positive and it brings meaning to your work when you can see the value that it can bring to other people and into people's lives. That is probably my favorite part about being an artist, is what it does to other people and how it benefits them intrinsically too, and that connection you make. And that's kind of how the whole Connected by Water term evolved. So it's like a hybrid between how our art makes people feel and how sustainability and conservation makes people feel, and
Absolutely.
that to me is what being a Floridian should be all about. because we live on
Can
a
you be
river.
a Georgian? and
We live
qualify?
no. We live on one big river.
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
You need to reclaim your citizenship.
I would in a
Yep.
heartbeat, but what are my poor little sister's grandkids going to do without Grandpa Bouncer? I've
No,
got a kid.
That's more important. Right?
I've got a kid that wouldn't take his nose out of the computer to save himself. And when he was on his winter break 2 weeks ago, he went fishing with me 2 days.
Ooh.
And when he went fishing in the past, he would sit there and play on his phone. And I had him casting a surface plug for 2 hours straight.
That's a home run.
Really? That's impressive.
And
That's
I
a
asked him if
home
he
run.
want to go again. He says, yeah, I'll go again. I says, you want to go tomorrow? He says, well, what time I got to get up? I says, we got to leave at 5. He says, how about the day after tomorrow? Okay. And he got up and went the day. And he lives like this.
But hey,
And I said, well, on our drive up, you can play on your computer because I know how much it means to him if we're on I-75. If we're not on I-75, we have to converse. He's 14 years old. He'll be 15 at the end of the month. And on our drive, we were talking on the city streets, going to pick up the worms and the shiners. And then we got on I-75, and he never picked up his phone till we were on our way back home. 2-hour drive, never picked up his phone.
you're getting through to him, Bouncer.
That's perfect.
We talked driving etiquette. We talked muscle building. We talked the responsibilities of getting him to be a 15-year-old instead of a little kid. It was the most bonding time I've had in my whole life, other than since my son was a little kid.
So
That's
how'd that
wonderful.
birds and bees conversation go?
What's that?
The birds and the bees.
No, we skipped that one. That's his father's department so far.
He said he'd have to consult with Carlene on that one.
Yeah, that's all you. He'll
Little
give
too
you his
young
number.
for me.
No, listen. His father.
Imagine Carlene calling a 15-year-old kid like, "Listen, your grandfather wanted me to call you, have this conversation." They could probably lock up.
Listen, my husband's 8 years younger than me, so I always tell him, do you ever feel like you were being watched on a playground in kindergarten? I mean, it's so weird.
But it's extremely rewarding than what I can take a kid who's been locked into computers every day, and all of a sudden we're fishing together. He's casting a plug. I was thinking just today, I've got to come up with the funds to take that kid on spring break or something, and I'm going to fish with this guy at at Headwaters. I'm going to fish with this guy at Sebastian. I'm going to fish this guy at Lake Ida, and I'm going to fish with Abby in Miami, and then we're going to drive back to Georgia, and he can go back to school. But to spend a week and take him places where the fishing's generally pretty, because
There's nothing like
we
it.
didn't get a bite in 2 days.
You got to take him down to the park where you lose all reception,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, but if he did it where we didn't even get a bite for 2 days, you ought to be no problem when you're catching fish hand over fist.
So this is where I got to say a little something about Heather.
All right. Here we go. Now
it'll be
we have
sure-
the logo, the Heather
Yeah,
Chronicles.
it'll be brief. And Heather, if you're
Yeah,
listening,
but then I got to tell my Heather stories.
there you go. And Heather, if you're listening, stop bristling. There's nothing more rewarding than being on the water with someone you love. There's nothing more rewarding than being out in nature, observing it all, whether it's the fish you're connected to, the birds in the sky, the sea mammals, turtles, all of it.
Even the microscopic critters in the seaweed
Yeah.
when they're little.
Absolutely. And to share that with your child or your nephew or anyone you're deeply connected with, it's just the greatest gift.
No,
in my opinion.
I have to correct
to be
one
connected
thing.
by water to that
Right.
person.
I got to correct one
There's
thing.
nothing better.
You don't have to be related to them.
You don't.
You
but
cannot count on all your fingers and all your toes how many handicapped kids I got the pleasure of taking fishing.
you're
And
there.
it doesn't matter how closely you're related to them. When they're smiling from ear to ear, your heart melts like there's no tomorrow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so rewarding. You know, we got organizations like R.J. Boyle and his Mission Fishing, and Tony DeJulia and all the work he does, and so many other young men, and
You did more than your fair share.
the kid, Jose Wahebi,
Mhm.
taking handicapped kids out on his boat and military people. those are the most rewarding trips that we ever get to do, is those trips with those kids.
I'm
And-
so happy that the conversation's taken this turn because it really is something that we love talking about family and the value that fishing brings,
Let me tell you about
to community and family.
Let me tell you about a tough teenager.
Hey,
I won't mention her name, but I'm running at 30 miles an hour to go catch a permit. And she says, "Stop the boat, I have to puke." How do you get seasick on a center console on a calm day at 30 miles an hour?
Right.
We're running across the Bahamas bank. Do we have to go much further? Because I got to puke. And flat calm. And then she's standing there catching world records on fly or world record sailfish that she releases, and then they tell her, well, it's not qualified because you possessed it. You didn't bring it in a boat, but you took it out of the water. That's against federal regulations. And she says, well, if I had to kill that sailfish to get the world record, I'm glad I don't have the world record.
Oh,
What was that girl's name? Do you remember her name?
I think that would be Heather.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to talk about her on this show. This girl, she was the greatest angler you ever want to meet, and fish from sunrise to sunset, and sicker than a dog day after day after day.
Mm-hmm.
Just most precious girl. Remember when Panther's daughter and her, I'd take a blue runner and I'd fillet it and skin it, and I'd cut all the dark meat, and I'd cut it real thin, and I'd put it in a Ziploc bag with some soy sauce, and the girls are sitting up in the bow going 30 miles an hour with soy sauce coming back and hitting the windshield while they're eating blue runner sushi up in the bow.
By the way, if you haven't had that, there's nothing greater than blue runner sashimi. It's just the best of sushi.
I haven't had it.
It's just
I tell people
outstanding.
that they think I'm crazy, but we ate it every day over in the Bahamas.
No way. I'd target
Really?
the fish just for that purpose.
Tell me about Mexican tarpon.
I'll do that. So when Billy Pate was going there back in the 80s and 90s quite a bit, he'd see all these dead fish at the docks, and it was driving him crazy. He'd go into the town square in the marketplace, and he'd see sometimes 100 tarpon just sitting in a pile, and nobody was even selling the eggs. It was just the carcasses were put there for the poor, basically, to scrape out the eggs. Some would actually eat the meat, but from what I understand, it's just one of the most foul-tasting meat. But they were just destroying the fish for no real reason. So BTT, in its early years, our first advocacy effort was we reached out to the Mexican government and said, hey, we have got reason to believe that your tarpon and our tarpon are all part of the same herd, that there's a major migratory push of the tarpon. They come around the Gulf of Mexico, they go around Key West, they come up the eastern seaboard, they'll go as far as the Chesapeake or sometimes further, but we believe it's all one fishery. And so what we're asking is that you give, you perhaps implement some regulations so that our shared fishery
Right.
stays vital.
Even though we have passports, they don't need them.
Right. And their response was, that's a great hypothesis. If you could prove that, you may get a little traction with us. Because there's the fish and fauna person who was actually a conservation-minded entity. But before he brought this back to his government, he needed some proof. And we said, well, that's what we're up to. In fact, from day one, we've always believed that any advocacy must be preceded by, science, things that you have proven scientifically. If you don't have the proof, don't try to change anyone's habits or desires because you think something. Once you prove it, then you've got something to share with the universe. So we started putting the acoustical tags in tarpon. Expensive as hell. They're still expensive. They're even more expensive going back 20 plus years ago. And we started tagging fish in Mexico. And soon enough, we proved exactly what our hypothesis was. They came around the Gulf, and they came down the Panhandle. They came down the western side of Florida and around the Cape and ultimately up the eastern seaboard. And at that point, we had the proof we needed. And at this juncture, Mexico has put a kibosh on its kill tournaments, and they've been pretty good partners in conservation. So that one research outcome, science leading to, proof, created a whirlwind of change with Mexico. And glad to see that perhaps 10,000 tarpon a year aren't dying that used to die back then.
Yeah,
So.
I want to add to that, and just bring back like a little global focus to what we're talking about here. The mission of Connected by Water and the podcast and who we bring on this show is important to us, and the reputation of that mission, and the viability of the organizations that we bring on. It's important because we want to accomplish something here by having these ongoing conversations. That just like this is like what episode 138. Not every episode we do is about conservation, but we talk about it pretty much every episode. Right? So it's kind of like this whole death by 1,000 cuts thing that we're trying to do here, or life by 1,000 cuts or whatever, right?
Band-Aids.
I don't want to say death, but band-aids, 1,000 band-aids on those death by 1,000 cuts, right? And this is why I think I was so excited to bring you on as a representative of Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, because I wanted to spotlight it as, and it really, Bouncer, you really kept pushing the issue, like, no, we need to talk about BTT on this episode. We need to talk about BTT, and you're right, we do.
He said we don't need to. He
No,
says, let's talk about
this
Heather.
this is what
Liar,
But
pants on fire.
this is why though I want to stop and talk about this right now, because the organizations that we do bring on, we believe in, we back, and I want people to understand that when you do put your money to an organization like Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, that's the kind of thing that it goes to.
Yeah.
Because when it goes to those tags that are expensive, right, the time it takes for people to do all the research, because it does affect us because our region here for BTT is mostly like Florida, the Bahamas, the Caribbean, Mexico, Belize, like that whole kind of
Very
like, the area
important.
right for the most. So
You're
right, we are all connected in
Right.
that circle, and it is a very much a connected by water circumstance.
We've pretty much
So it
proved
affects
that,
us and affects them
Yeah.
and affects you proved it.
As I
that the
understand-
larval spread for bonefish.
I was going to
Yeah.
say,
That's where the gene pool mixes. All of those regions
Mhm.
A lot
have
of
some
our-
crossover based on tides and currents and everything else.
A
And
lot of
that's
our
part of what
bonefish
keeps
come
the
from
fishery
Cuba.
viable.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, in negotiation with American politicians, go to the Cuban politicians. As I understand it, they've almost eliminated all bonefish netting in Cuba because those bonefish are important to the United States and to the Bahamas as a breeding ground for so many bonefish.
And part of how we were effective in that advocacy is sharing with the Cubans the economic value of a bonefish.
I think it all comes back
Early
to the economy,
on-
right? For the
Early
anytime you want to
on,
get
some
anything
of, our,
done.
some of our very brilliant members, like Tom Davidson, the founder, who's one of the brightest minds I've ever met, said, if we could break this down to the economic value of a bonefish,
It's the only way you can get traction with anything.
then, local governments, state governments,
Right.
countries, they realize, wow, this isn't just a resource that people enjoy. This means billions of dollars to our economy. It's a different conversation.
100%.
Now, whether you like fish or not, if you respect the economic needs of your state or your country, you're an advocate too. And we took that approach early on. We spent an absurd amount of money having economists do these kind of studies. And it's bait, lodges, hotels, restaurants, tackle, boats. I mean,
Right.
if you look at the whole
Artwork.
the whole chasm
don't
of
forget artwork.
economic connectivity to water to pursue these fish,
Mm-hmm.
it's mammoth.
Bonefish in Belize is one of my favorite pastimes. So
There's nothing
say again.
like it.
It's pretty neat watching them tail in. You see on a fly.
That's when you got the listen. That is my favorite thing in the world, right? Especially like I used to go over when I was doing artwork with Skip Smith and for the custom shootout, and he would fly us over as a thank you for doing the artwork, and we'd get Liz and I would get to spend a couple days there, and
One of the nicest guys
Right.
in the universe.
yeah,
Amen to
100%,
that.
100%. So he would always say, "You want me to get you on a marlin boat?" And I said, "Well, not really, because those guys, they have all their teams set, and I'd just be taking a boat ride, and I'd rather fish. And I said, I'll go to the other side of the island, and I'm going to get a guide, and I'm going to go for bonefish. So that was really
Good for
when
you.
I started doing that. That was really the first time that I had really bonefished, right, or fished for bonefish. And like in the Keys, you'd catch them, but it's not like they're, it was just a different story. So I'll never forget, Carlene, that first time I turned a mangrove corner with my guide, and I saw about 7 tails flickering in the rising
There's nothing
sun.
like it.
Just they're like little diamonds flicking off those tails.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, there they are, there they are, there they are. Shh, 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 shh. They can hear you.
Cast in
They
front
can
of
hear
him.
you. Yeah, they can hear
Gonna
you.
spook him.
They can hear you. Shh, 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 shh. Now you want to throw it." He's like whispering, right?
And you're having a heart palpitation.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, this is it. I'm here, right? And I'm fishing. I'm not fly fishing at this point yet, right? So I threw it right in the middle of them. Spooked them all. No, man, what are you doing? Like the Bahamian guys. Like I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
But you learned a lot.
I learned a lot by doing that, right?
Jeff,
I ended up catching 6 bonefish that day. Right,
so you learned quickly.
I learned quick on that. But the first time, right in the middle of them, they all went haywire.
I have to
But
ask
it was a beautiful
question
sight, though,
about,
seeing those tails flicking.
I have to ask a question about progress. Years and years and years ago, some of my customers went to Belize, and they said, "Oh, there are a lot of bonefish there, but they're all this big." And I said, "And the holes in the nets are about that big. That was the biggest ones that would go through the holes, right?" Has that ended, or is it just as bad as ever? I've heard rumors that it's slowed way down.
We've made a lot of progress there, but it's not ended, and there's different political opinions within a country, so it's an ongoing effort. I was going to suggest this. I'm not an official spokesman for BTT. I'm willing to share anything I know or can share. But at some point, you might want to have Aaron Adams, our director of science. He's been our lead scientist since the beginning. Maybe have him on the show.
It sounds like a wonderful idea.
Well, I'll tell you this, all right? A rare combination of incredible biologist and scientific mind, a guy that used to guide in the Boca Grande area a bit. I mean, he could put you on fish anywhere. He can tie flies as good as any fly you've ever seen. He's got unbelievable instincts on the water. Very few people I know cast as beautifully as Aaron. He's an all-around, he's like a Renaissance guy. He can articulate science to anyone. He doesn't get over your head like a lot of scientists tend to do. I would encourage you to have him on the show. We have other scientists as well. Ross Bocek, I would say, is also very articulate and able to communicate science. But it might be something for a future agenda. You'd have a lot of fun. You'd get some really, I think, deeper scientific result-oriented conversation that might be very appealing to any audience.
I think that sounds like a great idea because from my perspective, I cannot get deep enough into this.
Well,
because it's almost like a search. We're on a journey here.
I think if you had a one-on-one with Aaron, I think it would just it'd be outstanding for all.
We are definitely searching here on this show, and and I don't even know if we'll ever find it when we find it, but we're definitely searching for something on this show, and whether you want to call it the light or whether you want to call it we're just same thing with the shirt thing. We know we're not gonna ultimately solve the problem, but we could do our part.
You increase the awareness to a great extent.
That's it. You raise awareness, maybe people change one habit that is hurting the resource, and you've got this big audience, and if you impact 12 or 24 people each episode, wow.
Yeah.
You've created that ripple.
We're trying.
That makes a world of change.
We're definitely trying. I mean, can't try enough.
Yeah.
Can't try enough. So, man, it's been nice having you guys in here today.
Don't you have one more Heather story?
I think let's do that.
You know the rules. I can't actually initiate that conversation.
Let's do this. Let's end our show today with a nice Heather story, right? Who's got one here?
Well, I got it.
Oh,
If time allows, I got to
Time
do a
allows.
30-second.
the rooster fish
Ask-
story?
No, I got to do it. I got to do an ask for prayers here. Our good friend Mike.
Oh, please do. Yes.
Our good friend Mike Myatt
That's a good one.
is sitting bedside with his father,
Mhm.
Frank Myatt, right now. One of the most beautiful souls I've ever met, as is his son Mike. And we're losing our friend Frank. His system's shutting down, and just sending prayers for strength at this time, and just love and energy. And we can't change the inevitable, but we want Mike, Frank, family to know that we're all here in support at this very difficult time.
Very
Thanks
much
for
so.
saying that.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying that. And
Thank you.
you know, listen, I lost my father a year ago. I know all.
Sorry
It's
to
still it's still a fresh cut, and I know all too well. I got a frog in my throat saying that. I know all too well what Mike is dealing with right now. I spoke to him this morning, and you know, it's I don't want to really elaborate on my thoughts and feelings and get too you know, heavy-handed on it, but I think you said it best. So we appreciate you bringing that up.
Very much so.
You know,
Thanks for allowing
And I
me
will
to.
say, normally on this particular episode, Mike would have called in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
You know, because Mike calls in, you know, whenever his friends are on, and he knows everybody that's coming on the show. I call him before the show, and I say, hey, just so you know, so and so is coming on tonight.
called in on Heather's show.
Yeah, and he'll call in.
Well-
You know what I mean? If it's a friend or family or something like that. And normally on this episode, he definitely would have called in.
Well, I'll say this.
The fact that we
Mike-
did not hear from him speaks to what you just said. So.
Mike did not fall very far from the tree. His father is as beautiful a person as Mike, and they're both very incredibly easy guys to love.
No
Yep.
doubt about that.
100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you mentioning that.
Thank you very much.
So let's end this on a fun note here. So I want to listen. If you have not seen the Heather Harkavy episode, it is episode number 128. That's what I was looking at my phone the last time. I just wanted to make sure it is called the Fish for Change episode, right? So it's not that far back because this is episode 138. So it was 10 episodes ago, right? Please go back and watch that episode as a prequel to this one, because she's a firecracker for sure. And listen, you raised 100%. You raised a great daughter.
Two of
right?
them.
Yeah, two of them.
Two
I
of
didn't
them.
I didn't meet the other one. I
Well, the
only
other
met
one's
this one.
not the fisherman in the family. She's the dancer. And what else is she doing?
She's the healer.
The healer?
Ariel's, yep, she's going to graduate school at Denver for the Denver School of Traditional Chinese Medicine.
Wow.
Studying acupuncture and herbal medicine, and she's just a natural-born healer.
You ever see the movie Old School?
No, but I'll look it up.
Oh, Denver, the Sunshine State. Never mind. Sorry, for
guess
those of you old school fans out there would have got that joke. So, drop a Heather story on me to end this.
Well, my favorite Heather stories are, as I
You got
mentioned
one, Nick?
before,
No?
she was chumming
I'm
on
bummed I
the
didn't get to
bank.
meet
She
her.
was chumming in the Gulf Stream.
She's chumming her
But-
breakfast.
And she sat on the bow with her girlfriend eating raw blue runners. But God, just so many things she did. I mean, she nurtured this little girl who came with her. Excellent fly caster. We caught so many world's records. I lost track of. Before she graduated from high school, she had an International Game Fish Association Lifetime Achievement Award for having over 100 world's records before she graduated from high school.
Stop it.
What do we have, like 6 or 7 horseye jack records?
We crushed it that weekend.
We had the
Just
swordfish
crushed it.
world's record. Her greatest angling achievement ever, I wasn't there for. She was in Costa Rica, and she hooked a rooster fish. And how long did she fight that rooster fish?
Almost 6 hours.
As a little girl. She was probably 10 or 12 then.
So there's an interesting story. One Heather will actually appreciate, because she didn't get the fish She did not get the record. We were virtually hanging back a feather to catch a bonita, and a rooster fish came up and inhaled the bonita as soon as it ate the feather, and somehow it got hooked. And Heather's now connected to about an 80-pound rooster fish. She's on a light spinning rod with 8-pound test.
Ugh.
And this fight goes on until the sun's getting low. The captain's saying, they're going to kill me. I should be back at the docks. You don't understand. There's flotsam in the water. If I hit the flotsam,
Trees.
I'll lose my lower unit. I'm going to lose my job. And then the other side of him, then he would take a deep breath and goes, but if she gets this fish,
Yeah.
this is a world record on 8-pound line, you know? So here we're going back and forth. Heather, this fish.
This is the old man in the sea, but she's 10 years old, 8 years old, something like that.
In the first, about 50 minutes into the fish fight, she has the fish behind, 8 feet behind the boat. And you're like, lift the rod, Heather, you know. She gets it in close enough. The mate takes a miserably reckless, sad to say this, swat at it and puts about a 4-inch cut on its back, but the gaff doesn't sink. Fish blows out of there, almost spools her. Heather was down to maybe 10 yards or less of line 4 times during this fish fight. And it gets to the point where she's dehydrating. I'm forcing water into her. I'm pouring buckets of water over her head. Her hands are starting to curl. She's having a hard time holding, even manipulating the rod and reel as we get into like hour 5. And it's just unbelievable. The fish came really close to the transom probably 3 other times. Almost, I think one time, a legitimate opportunity to gaff it was missed. And no blame. Everyone was just going crazy. And at that point,
Doesn't sound like it was an easy shot.
Well, we came in after dark, so most people aren't used to, staying out that late. But in the final hour, the guide's saying, "Listen, I'm going to get fired. In the minimum, I'm going to get chewed up and probably beat up when I get back to the dock." And he goes, "You got to tighten the drag." And I said, "Well, I think the drag was set pretty good."
Yeah.
So Heather would turn it like a quarter turn.
That's it.
And then every 10 minutes, he'd say, "You got to make it tighter." Another quarter turn. And she's fighting it. At this point,
I'm cringing hearing this right now.
Her hands are just, tears are streaming down her face, but she's not crying. She's not whining. She's not giving up. And it tells her to tighten it a little bit more. You ever hear that sound, like the crystal sound?
Mm-hmm.
You could hear that
humming.
That line was just torquing to the nines. And this happened it seemed like an hour, but it was like probably 12 seconds. Then, bing! And it was gone. And everyone in the boat just picked Heather up and just like celebrated her like the champion she was for fighting that hard for that long. She didn't get the fish. She got all these damn records, which are wonderful, she's proud of, but one of the fish fights she'll never forget that she's most proud of is how she stayed in the saddle with that fish for damn near 6 hours.
I'm sure glad you told that story, because that's heartwarming to me every time I hear it.
I'm telling you right now, hearing the angler's father tell that story makes me want to cry.
I'm crying.
and that's not. I mean that. That my heart hurts for her, really. But listen, I mean having her here at the table, right, and no one getting to know her, it makes that even more meaningful to hear. But sometimes it's your failures that, and I wouldn't even call that a failure, to be honest with you. But sometimes it's the misses that make who you are.
What a character builder that is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
And to never give up through all that pain and everything else.
It reminds me of Islands in the Stream rather than Old
Islands
Man in the Sea. It's more than what
really
that reminds me of.
Yeah.
So I want to close with this. Okay, we discussed Bonefish Tarpon Trust, right? But we more so the reason that we discussed that was because we discussed conservation. We discussed preserving our resources for future generations. We discussed family and fishing and the value that what it means to fish with your daughter and your kids, and you raise them in a life that's connected by water. And I think that really ultimately for me was the point today, was to say the reason that we believe in what we believe in so hardcore and so much here is for that, is to be able to provide that for your children for years and generations to come.
Hallelujah.
And that ultimately is the point. It's not just to say, yeah, we cleaned that up, we did good, and go screw yourself. But it's like, no, it's like, it's to really lay that foundation for future generations to come. Because I think tradition is a valuable resource too, and I think it speaks to that. You talk about going out of the Keys and how much that's changed, and how that developed the BTT, and you go down there and you see the development that goes down, and you want to preserve some of that tradition for reasons of nostalgia, but also for reasons of conservation, for reasons of family, and just to have it there as something that's preserved for everyone to be able to enjoy, however they need to enjoy it, but responsibly, please.
Well, to me, just to add to that, to me, we don't do what we do for conservation for us because we've already enjoyed the ocean that we had and
Bingo.
have. We're really doing it for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
We've reaped the benefits, but we're trying to leave a quality product for future generations.
Yeah.
So important to all of us.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Bouncer,
Guilty.
you're the man. Thank you. Thank you so much for in the past couple of months really getting to know you. It's really been an honor.
Well, it's
truly,
been my honor to be with you,
Yeah.
and it was an honor to see Jeff come join us. We didn't get to learn anything about Jeff Harkavy. I mean,
I think we did.
Hey,
I think we got beneath
He's
the
a
skin a little
proud
bit.
papa.
Yeah, I think
he's
we
a
did.
proud papa, but he's a
Think
great angler and he's a great conservationist.
Well,
and
I think the great angler part of it took care of itself in the way he talked in this conversation. I think everyone got that about that. I don't think
well, thank you.
I don't think you lay it down like that without being able to back it up. So
Thank you.
I think everyone got that.
When I send my girls a group text,
Mm-hmm.
I always end it with #ProudPapa.
Nice. I love it, and that's
Yeah.
what it's all about. And that's what I think that's what this episode's all been about tonight.
Yep,
So
no doubt.
So Jeff Harkavy, great first time speaking with you.
Great honor to be on your
And
show.
I hope it's just the beginning of many more conversations that we're going to have.
Wow.
And I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I'll look forward to that. This
Yeah.
has been great, and I think what you're up to is just great for the resource, great for the sport, great for the community that we're all so blessed to be a part of. And thank you for the opportunity.
And for all those guys having a hard time on the West Coast, thank you for your great effort for
Yep.
them.
Yep.
Here, here.
Yep.
Captains for Clean Water taking care of those guides fund. It's really, really important.
Here, here.
And they're too busy to thank you.
Yeah, they
But
are.
I thank you for them.
Yeah.
They are. They are very busy right
Well
now.
said.
All right. Well, listen. I want to say that I had a visit from Joey Cardi this morning. Right, he stopped by just to say hi today, and he wanted to let me know that he supports everything that we're doing as well, and he supports the West Coast and all that's going on over there. And I want to just thank him for the support that he's given to the studio. So if you're in the market for a new truck or vehicle, go ahead and check out Joey Cardi Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. They'll be there for you, and that guy does more for the community underneath the lines, right? And Joey's just like that. He doesn't ever want the credit, and he doesn't ever want people to really. He just does and gives and does and gives, and he really does do that. And so he's been doing more in this initiative than people understand. He doesn't really want me to talk about it. That's all I'm going to say.
That's the greatest form of philanthropy right
So,
No
there.
doubt.
Yeah, and that's all I want. That's all I think I'm allowed to say about it. You know what I mean? But he's been doing a lot of good here. So, and also I want to thank. We've been drinking the Legacy today.
Hoo-ha.
It's
From
a
Papa's
good drink,
Pilar,
boy.
right? So
Yeah.
I
Three
busted out the
different
good. I
ways.
busted out the good stuff for you guys today.
Papa's
So,
Pilar.
and I again want to just say that we're just thankful to be part of the Papa's Pilar family, and just really, we talk about this episode, like all the good that they do in the community and everything, and that's really why we love them so much. And it's just great to be a part of these guys. So I want to just say, listen, if you have not tried the W sauce yet, please do. Right, my buddy Brad and Baron Burton's W sauce. They got the Vegan Shire, which you say has no anchovies, right? And then the Fire Shire, and then the America's Worcestershire sauce. And Nick took it home, tried it out, it's just really great stuff. So give that W sauce a shot whenever you can, right?
Yeah.
And if you're hungry, head on over to Papa's Raw Bar, order something off the Connected by Water inspired sushi menu. Right? So we're proud to be associated with the best darn raw bar in town. Not only just in town, I think in the world, personally. It's my opinion, but I could be wrong, but I'm probably not.
You're not wrong
Right.
very often that
Yeah.
I've seen.
So thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us.
so
Yeah.
much.
Thank
Thanks.
you for having
Always
us.
a pleasure to, and giving credit where credit's due. Connected by Water is right on Atlantic Beach Boulevard, just east of the Intercoastal Waterway. And isn't this some impressive assortment of different art? What a
Unbelievable. Listen, Dennis, you don't need to get your head blown up here, but I'm looking around this beautiful storefront you have, and the artwork is fantastic.
I appreciate that.
It's
sir. Thank you.
diverse.
Thank you.
You capture the things that we love in such a beautiful way, and it's great stuff. You're inspired. Keep it up. Look forward to seeing your other things to come.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Your ego, it's not your amigo. Always do your best and let God do the rest. And then do not ever forget that no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, we are all connected by water.
Amen.
Hoorah. Amen.